You know what red wine looks like when it's falling through the air in slow motion? When it's aimed at someone's face, meant to humiliate them in front of 200 people. Marcus Bennett does. He remembers the exact moment Derek Sterling raised that glass high above his head, making sure every camera in that ballroom could catch the angle. He remembers the smile on Derek's face, not just cruel, but proud. Like he was doing something noble. Like he was putting someone in their place. The wine hit warm. It splashed across Marcus's navy suit jacket, soaked into his white shirt, dripped down his collar and onto his chest. Some of it caught his jaw. A few drops landed on his shoes. The ballroom went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then came the gasps, the whispers, the nervous laughter from people who didn't know whether to be shocked or entertained. And through it all, the soft clicking of phone cameras, recording everything. Capturing the moment a man they thought was nobody got drenched like he didn't matter. Catherine Sterling stood beside her husband, hand over her mouth, but her eyes were smiling. She'd picked out that wine herself just moments before. She'd been the one to suggest it. Marcus stood there, wine dripping from his chin, and did something that confused everyone in that room. He smiled. Not a big smile. Not a threatening one. Just a small, quiet curve of his lips that said more than any words could. He lifted 2 fingers to his jaw, wiped away a drop of wine, and straightened his posture. Then, without saying a single word to anyone, he turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps were the only sound in that massive ballroom. Steady. Calm. Unbothered. A server near the door whispered to her colleague, "That man walks like he owns the place." Her colleague whispered back, "Maybe he does." Nobody believed it. But let me take you back. Let me show you how we got here. Because this story didn't start with wine and humiliation. It started 3 hours earlier, when Marcus Bennett walked through the front doors of the Sterling Towers Grand Ballroom, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But you couldn't tell by looking at it. That was intentional. Marcus had learned a long time ago that the world reveals itself differently when people think you're ordinary. When they think you're beneath them, they show you who they really are. No masks. No pretending. Just raw truth. The security guard at the entrance had looked him up and down with suspicion in his eyes. "You with catering, sir?" he'd asked, already reaching for his radio. Marcus had simply pulled out his invitation. A black card with a silver seal that only 20 people in that entire city possessed. The guard's face had shifted from suspicious to embarrassed in half a second. He'd stepped aside quickly, muttering an apology Marcus didn't need. Inside, the ballroom looked like someone had tried to bottle luxury and spray it everywhere. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings, so high they made you feel small. White tablecloths stretched across dozens of round tables, each one set with china so delicate it looked like it would shatter if you breathed too hard. A string quartet played Mozart in the corner, though nobody was really listening. They were too busy networking, schmoozing, and pretending they belonged in rooms like this. Everyone was talking about the same thing. The deal. $800 million. That's what Apex Digital Systems was about to sign with a mystery investor. Nobody knew who the investor was, but everyone had theories. Everyone wanted to be close to it. Everyone wanted to say they were in the room when it happened. Marcus ordered water at the bar. The bartender served him quickly, professionally, but Marcus noticed the way his eyes lingered, like he was trying to figure out if Marcus belonged there or not. A woman in a sequined dress shifted her purse to her other arm when Marcus stepped near her. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The message was clear: don't stand too close. A man in an expensive tuxedo cut in front of him at the bar, throwing back a comment with a smirk. Staff orders at the side, right? Marcus had simply moved aside. No confrontation. No explanation. He'd learned that some people aren't worth the energy it takes to correct them. He found a spot near a marble column where he could see everything, but remain mostly invisible. That's where he liked to be. Watching. Observing. Learning who people were when they thought nobody important was looking. The host tapped the microphone, and the room quieted down. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from a paycheck, "welcome to the Apex Digital Systems Gala." Applause erupted. Mechanical. Practiced. The kind of clapping people do, because everyone else is doing it. "Tonight," the host continued, "we celebrate a historic partnership. $800 million that will revolutionize our industry, our city, and perhaps our entire future." More applause. Champagne glasses raised. Camera flashes popping like tiny fireworks. Then she walked onto the stage. Catherine Sterling wore a gold dress that seemed to absorb every light in the room and reflect it back twice as bright. She waved to the crowd like she was royalty greeting her subjects. Her husband, Derek, stood beside her in a suit so perfectly tailored it probably had its own insurance policy. They were beautiful, powerful, confident. They were also about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. Marcus watched them from his column. He saw the way they smiled at the crowd, the way they soaked in the attention, the way they believed, truly believed, that they were the center of the universe. Then Catherine's eyes found him. He saw the exact moment her expression changed. Confusion first, then suspicion, then something uglier, contempt. She leaned toward Derek and whispered something. Derek's smile faltered. His eyes found Marcus too. And just like that, Marcus knew what was coming. Derek stepped off the stage with that fake friendliness rich people use when they want to seem approachable. He walked straight toward Marcus, hand extended like he was about to shake hands, but Marcus could see the tension in his shoulders. "Sir," Derek said, his voice just loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Are you supposed to be standing here?" He reached out and tapped Marcus's sleeve. Not aggressive, just dismissive, like you'd tap a dog that wandered where it shouldn't. Marcus kept his voice calm. "I'm fine here, just observing." Derek chuckled, the kind of laugh that isn't really a laugh. "Observing. Right." He snapped his fingers at a server. "Get him a towel or something. Looks like he's sweating through that budget suit." A few guests turned to look. Whispers started spreading like ripples in water. "Who let him into VIP?" someone murmured. "The staff entrance is on the other side," another voice added. Catherine approached next, heels clicking against the marble floor with sharp precision. She picked up a glass of red wine from a server's tray without even looking at the person holding it. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus. "Sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "If you needed work tonight, you should have signed up properly. Pretending to be a guest? That's not appropriate." Marcus said nothing. His silence seemed to unsettle them more than any words could have. Catherine stepped closer, holding out the wine glass toward his chest. "Take this to table 3. They're waiting." When he didn't reach for it, her smile disappeared completely. "Seriously? Do your job." That's when Derek grabbed the glass from her hand. He raised it high, making sure everyone could see, making sure every phone in the room could capture the moment. "One less confused worker ruining the atmosphere," he announced. Then he tilted the glass forward. "And that's where we came in. The wine. The silence. The shock." Marcus wiped his jaw, straightened his suit, and walked out without a word. But here's what nobody in that room knew. As Marcus stepped into the hallway, pulled out his phone, and made a call that would change everything, inside that ballroom, people were already starting to ask questions. A server whispered, "Did you see how he walked? That's not how regular people walk." A guest murmured to her friend, "Something feels off. You don't stay that calm unless you're somebody." And in the elevator, as Marcus descended toward the lobby, he loosened his tie slightly and allowed himself one small exhale. Then he made the call. "Pull the offer," he said quietly. "Lock every channel. Announce it now." The voice on the other end responded instantly, "Understood." Marcus ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Above him, in that glittering ballroom full of beautiful, powerful, confident people, the music was still playing. But not for long. You ever notice how quickly a room can change? How fast celebration can turn into chaos? How a place filled with laughter and music can become silent except for the sound of people's worlds falling apart? It happened faster than anyone expected. Marcus was still in the elevator when it started. The music in the ballroom cut off mid-note. Just stopped, like someone had yanked the plug out of the wall. The string quartet's violins hung in the air, confused. The host froze mid-sentence, his smile stuck on his face like a mask that didn't fit anymore. A man in a gray suit rushed through the tables. Phone pressed against his ear so hard it looked like it might merge with his skull. His face transformed as he moved, confusion melting into panic, panic hardening into terror. He reached the host and whispered something that made all the color drain from the man's face. Derek noticed first. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice carrying that edge of someone who's used to getting immediate answers. The host swallowed hard. You could see his throat work. "The signing." He started, then stopped. Tried again. "The signing is suspended." For a moment, nobody moved. The word hung there in the expensive air like it didn't make sense. Like it was in a foreign language. Then the room exploded. "Suspended," someone shouted. What do you mean suspended? You don't freeze an $800 million deal in the middle of a gala. This is impossible. Conversations erupted everywhere, overlapping, competing, getting louder and more desperate. It sounded like a stadium right before a riot starts. That collective confusion turning into fear, turning into anger. Catherine grabbed the host's arm. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the panic in her eyes anymore. Who gave that order? She demanded. The host looked like he wanted to disappear. It came from the top, he whispered. The partner. The directive is final. Derek's face went red. I am the top, he shouted. The host shook his head slowly. Not tonight, Mr. Sterling. Not tonight. All around them, executives were pulling out their phones. Alert after alert was popping up, each one worse than the last. You could track the spread of bad news by watching faces change, confusion, then shock, then horror. Every account tied to Apex Digital just got frozen, someone said, voice shaking. Investors are pulling out, another voice added. My entire screen is red. Everything's red. A woman near the stage grabbed her husband's arm. David, what's happening? What does this mean? He didn't answer. He was too busy staring at his phone like it had just told him his house was on fire. Then someone near the door said something that made everything worse. Wait, look at this video. The video was already spreading. Already going viral in real time, bouncing from phone to phone, table to table, like a virus that moved at the speed of light. It showed Derek raising the wine glass. It showed the wine falling. It showed Marcus standing there, calm, wiping his jaw with 2 fingers. It showed him walking away with a dignity that made everyone who watched it feel ashamed. The caption underneath read, They humiliated a man they thought was staff. He walked out like he owned the place. Within 30 seconds, half the room had seen it. Within a minute, everyone had. The whispers started quiet, then grew louder. That's him. That's the guy they poured wine on. Who is he? I don't know, but did you see how he walked? That's not a regular person. Oh God. Oh God, what did they do? Catherine's hands started shaking. She grabbed Derek's sleeve. Fix this, she hissed. Fix it now. But Derek couldn't fix anything. He was too busy staring at the main display screens as a new alert appeared, larger than all the others. Apex Digital Systems contract, terminated. The word terminated seemed to pulse on the screen. Final. Absolute. No room for negotiation. Derek blinked hard, like he could make the words disappear if he just reset his vision. Terminated, he whispered. That's not possible. There was no warning. No negotiation. You can't just. A board member stormed up to him, practically vibrating with rage. This is catastrophic. Do you understand? Do you have any idea who you offended? Derek's voice came out defensive, almost childish. I didn't offend anyone. You offended the man who funded this entire deal, the board member shouted, not caring anymore who heard. You humiliated him in front of 200 people. You poured wine on him like he was trash. Vanessa's breath caught in her throat. Who? She asked, but part of her already knew. Part of her had known from the moment Marcus walked away without saying a word. The board member's voice dropped low, dangerous. Marcus Bennett. He owns the partner company. All of it. Every single share. And you just destroyed our relationship with him because you thought he looked like he didn't belong. The words hit like a physical blow. Catherine actually stumbled backward. Derek's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Around them, the ballroom was emptying. Guests were leaving, some quietly, trying not to be associated with the disaster, others rushing for the exits like the building was on fire. Servers stood frozen against the walls, watching history happen, watching an empire collapse in real time. Someone near the kitchen whispered, I told you. I told you he didn't walk like staff. Another server whispered back, they messed with the wrong man. They messed up bad. By morning, the world knew everything. Headlines screamed across every news site, every social media platform, every screen in every coffee shop and office building. CEO humiliates secret investor at own gala. $800 million deal destroyed by glass of wine. The most expensive mistake in business history. The video had been viewed millions of times. Millions. People were dissecting every frame, every expression, every detail. Marcus's calm walk away had become iconic. Derek's smug face had become a symbol of everything wrong with privilege and arrogance. Comments flooded in by the thousands. Imagine not knowing you just humiliated the person funding your entire future. The way he walked away without saying a word is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. This is what happens when you judge people by their appearance. Investors didn't just pull out, they ran. They fled Apex Digital like it was a sinking ship, and they were the last lifeboats pushing away from the dock. Partners vanished overnight. Board members resigned via email, not even bothering with phone calls. The company's value didn't just drop, it cratered. It fell so fast and so hard that financial analysts would study it for years as a case study in corporate collapse. Catherine barely slept that night. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in her gold dress, makeup smeared, phone buzzing nonstop with messages she couldn't bring herself to read. Each buzz was another piece of bad news. Another bridge burned. Another door slammed shut. Derek paced their bedroom floor, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled, looking 10 years older than he had the day before. He kept making calls, but every conversation ended the same way. "We're out. Don't call again. You're toxic now. We can't be associated with this." By noon, Catherine looked at him with red, swollen eyes. "We have to talk to him," she said, her voice hoarse. "If we don't, Derek, everything is gone. Everything." Derek wanted to argue. Wanted to say they'd find another way. But there was no other way. They both knew it. They drove to Marcus's neighborhood in silence. The drive felt like a funeral procession, slow, heavy, filled with dread. His neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined, modest. The complete opposite of their penthouse overlooking the city. The complete opposite of everything they'd built their identity around. When Marcus opened his door, he looked exactly the same as he had the night before. Calm, steady, unbothered, like their entire world falling apart was just background noise to him. Catherine spoke first, and her voice broke immediately. "We were wrong." The words came out strangled, desperate. "We treated you like nothing. We were cruel and stupid and wrong. Please let us fix this." Derek added, his own voice shaking in a way it never had before. "We lost everything. Our investors, our partners, our reputation. Just give us a chance to talk. To make this right somehow." Marcus stood in his doorway and looked at them for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but firm. Gentle, almost, but carrying the weight of absolute finality. "You didn't lose everything today," he said. "You lost it the second you decided people's worth came from whether they made you comfortable. You lost it when you built a world where disrespect had no cost." Catherine's tears fell freely now. She didn't even try to stop them. Marcus continued. "You created a system where you could humiliate people and walk away laughing. Where you could judge someone's value by looking at them for 5 seconds. Where you could pour wine on a human being because you decided he didn't belong in your space. We didn't know who you were," Catherine whispered. And that's when Marcus said the thing that would stick with them forever. "That's exactly the problem. You didn't care who I was. You saw someone you thought was beneath you, and you decided that gave you permission to be cruel. You didn't need to know who I was to treat me with basic human dignity. But you chose not to." Derek swallowed hard. "Is there anything we can do? Anything at all?" Marcus shook his head once. Gentle but final. "The deal is gone. The trust is gone. And my door is closed." He stepped back, his hand already moving to close the door. But before he did, he left them with one last thought. "Walk carefully," he said quietly. "The world is smaller than you think. And people remember how you made them feel." The door closed. Catherine and Derek stood there for a moment, staring at the wood grain, listening to the sound of locks clicking into place on the other side. Then they turned and walked back to their car, carrying nothing but the weight of a lesson learned too late. Marcus's life moved forward. He had other deals, other investments, other opportunities. His reputation, if anything, grew stronger. People respected the quiet power he'd shown, the dignity in his response, the way he'd let actions speak louder than words. Apex Digital Systems never recovered. The company limped along for a few months before being absorbed by a competitor for pennies on the dollar. Catherine and Derek's names became cautionary tales in business schools. Examples of how arrogance and prejudice can destroy everything you've built in a single moment. But here's the thing that stayed with everyone who heard this story. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the deal. It was about the simple, powerful truth that every person deserves respect. That you don't know someone's worth by looking at their clothes or their car or where they're standing in a room. That kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. Marcus knew that truth. He'd lived it. Catherine and Derek learned it the hard way. And somewhere in that lesson is something for all of us. A reminder to look at people, really look at them. To treat the server with the same respect as the CEO. To understand that power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it walks away without a word and lets the consequences speak for themselves. Because the world really is smaller than we think. And people always remember how you made them feel.